is probably something I've always been a little bit kind of aware of, just in a very, very simple sense, as in like just trying to do the right thing. You don't throw things on the floor, you recycle stuff. That's just how my parents have brought me up. There's nothing special about that, but definitely having lived with lots of different people, I can see that some people are just completely unaware and uncaring about these things whatsoever.
Yeah.
So in relation to that, I guess I've always just been a tiny little bit aware. But for me, really, it started. So I used to work, which you probably do know, but you may not. I used to work in the fashion industry.
Yes.
So I used to work in product development and buying. So that's where you kind of like, you're just developing all the different clothes, shoes, whatever that you're selling. And I worked for a company that I wasn't particularly happy with, and lots of reasons created me to want to leave that job behind and that career behind. And that's when I started getting into sustainability.
Yeah.
Because I was seeing firsthand how it works in fast fashion. Really, really cheap clothes. It's a very, it's called a linear model. It's when you take something and then you just sell it off, and that's the end life cycle of that product, which is basically just waste.
Okay.
So it either gets burnt, it gets binned, it gets whatever. There's no continuity to it. And it's a very destructive model. And it's the model that most of our economy is based on. So then I started learning about sustainability in the fashion industry.
So when you say sustainability, would that be, for example, if the shirt has a second life and is later resold to somebody else, or if it's recycled into maybe some kind of kitchen wiping kind of stuff? Is that the idea?
That's definitely part of it. It's very wide. I mean, that's one element, which is the life cycle of a product.
Yeah.
So exactly as you just said, what does that look like? Can it be turned into another, a raw material for another industry? Can it be reused? Can it be repurposed?
Yeah.
But then you've got tons of other elements of what I think many people would class as sustainability, which has become a bit of a misused word. Really, it's just like a catch-all phrase. And
like to me, it's a very broad term, and I don't know like which part of it necessarily. For example, you'd be referring to. So I guess it's like almost an umbrella term, right?
It is. Yeah. So you've got like, to just like briefly overlay it. You've got like the elements of the raw materials. So where does that come from?
Yeah.
Like, is there animal involvement? Obviously, I've got my vegan tendencies, so I don't like a lot of that stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean that from an environmental point of view, it's bad.
So that's like, separate as well. Yeah.
Like grass-fed beef, like to take an example, it's much better for the environment than factory farming.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is it the other way?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so grass-fed beef is worse because
it requires
methane
more land.
Oh, okay. And why is that bad for the environment?
Because if you look at the idea of what farming is, you need to take all of this land away to create space for an animal to be.
Right. And the idea being that if there was another kind of species there, that would just be kicked out, relocated.
It'd be natural biodiversity in species, or the vast majority of times it would be trees.
Yeah, of course.
So, like, the biggest example is deforestation in the Amazon. Like, everyone knows that's just getting obliterated.
Yeah, very much.
And a lot of that is for beef industry. Probably a lot of it's for marijuana as well.
Oh, really? Is it because it's recently become more legal, or has it just always been a growing industry?
It's just always been there.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. But so that's how sometimes it's things that may be better for the animals are actually. It doesn't. The balance isn't the same with the environmental aspects.
And you mentioned if animals are involved. Are animals at all involved in the fashion industry?
For raw materials, leather, wool, silk, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Leather, wool, and
silk. So you got the silkworms.
How did that come from?
I actually don't know.
Oh,
I couldn't tell you. Maybe we can look it up.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it's not a very nice process.
Okay.
Silkworms. Shouldn't be laughing. But yeah, there's tons of it. You've got Angora.
Yep.
And there's lots of other ways. We just use animals' furs and skin in a lot of products, don't we? And then just before we came on live, we're talking about like the rhhinos and things like that. So then, and then you've got snakes, and so a lot of it gets used like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like my straightaway line of thought is most clothes are cotton, but I've also heard from this biodiversity expert about the fact that there are two types of cotton. There is regular cotton, which is harming for the environment, and then there is. do you know anything about this other type of cotton? It costs about 10 times the price, but it is non-synthetic, which means it uses less water, something like that. So it's like eco-friendly cotton.
Non-synthetic, but normal cotton isn't synthetic.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. I was hoping you'd know about it. Let's quickly pause, and I want to quickly look it up online, and then we can jump back on, so we can talk about it. So we're back, and I think the two different types are conventional and organic cotton, and they are mostly different. In conventional cotton farming, often uses genetically modified seeds, synthetic pesticides, and fertilizers, all of which are harming to the environment, while the other one is just natural. And the primary difference is that if you get conventional cotton, it would just cost like 10th of the price. That's why businesses like most of the cotton that is used is that. Yeah. And organic cotton is worse
definitely
in terms of costs, because they also have to pay, I guess, more for labor, and I guess less of it survives if they're not using fertilizers. What's your view on fertilizers, like in farming? Because I know that you are vegan, and there's a very big, especially from what I know in the US, topic about using pesticides and fertilizers and all those other pest repelling chemicals when farming. Is that necessary? Can that be avoided? Is it worth getting in foods that are not exposed to that? What's your take on it?
To just preface and say, like, I won't know whether I'm 100% correct in this, because it's kind of like opinion based.
That's great.
Which is, that, people maybe say this isn't necessarily the case. I do feel that most of that stuff is wrong.
All right.
I know that if you're doing an organic product, be that cotton or anything else, you will have a set of criteria which you have to meet. And the vast majority of the time, if it's being done properly, you'll have an external body, which is like an accreditation body, which will check you on an annually basis that you're meeting all of these criteria to enforce and also to support, to bring you up to the standard. So if you are organic, you will not be using these kind of things. And long term, the science should say that is better for all involved.
Yeah.
I do understand, though, that the world that we live in isn't as simple as that.
All right.
And sometimes these things may be necessary. I don't actually know where on the spectrum that is, because if everyone's doing organic, are we in a place to actually produce enough resources to keep the world going?
Right.
So it's this everything that we have in the issues of environmentalism is that difficult balancing act, isn't it? It's like it's perfect world against realistic scenario, and at the end of the day, we are 7-8 billion people.
Yeah, I think 8 now.
8, and it's just going up exponentially.
Yeah.
So this is that difficult balance. I would rather do the organic stuff, but then, do I buy organic foods? No, I don't. Why? Because I can't afford it all the time. I buy where I can, but if I'm to change my entire life to organic, it does. It's a significant cost impact, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then there's the availability impact of it as well. So it's a difficult one for stuff like that. But just to go back to the cotton, as you're talking about the conventional cotton and the organic cotton, there are these bodies like the GOTS. It's a Global Organic, I can't remember the name of it now, but we can check it. GOTS, it's the big kind of like accreditation body for organic.
Where is it based? Do you know? I wonder who's running it.
I would guess it's American or British, but I'm not entirely sure.
So they're the ones that like do the checking, or
it's the gold standard for organic cotton. So there's lots of different cotton initiatives that you can have. Better Cotton is one, but GOTS is like kind of the gold standard for organic. And this, as you're talking about the seeds, it's definitely in the seeds. So like if you're a farmer in, unfortunately, a poorer, lesser developed country, they can try to help you get on board with that, give you the education. But for a lot of people, that kind of like outlay to start that is so difficult. And it's a risk that they don't feel that they can always take that risk. So going organic, if your livelihood is based on your cotton production, taking that big business risk to go organic can sometimes be something that the farmers don't feel that they can do because
Yeah.
it will impact, their future and
And
their
it's
money. So it's difficult.
Probably gonna affect their rate of employment, because from a purely economic point of view,
Mhm.
if something costs 10 times the price or even twice the price, if something is marginally more expensive, you will price it in, which means if the clothing is more expensive, you'll sell less of it. So you don't need that much production. So I can see a world in which, let's say, 5,000 people in the Philippines are employed and they're working on this farm, and then the business decides to take it purely organic. It's probably a net positive in the long run because they're contributing to a more sustainable, a less environmentally harming production. But for those 5,000 people that now get laid off, and now there's only 2,500 of them, that's a catastrophe. So
Yeah.
it's there's a very famous example of Nike getting in trouble in the US in around the 80s.
Okay, then.
They were producing shoes. I believe it was in Vietnam, but don't quote me on it. But they had kids working on the production sites. And
shocking.
for our culture, it's shocking because how can you do that?
Yeah.
It's so unethical. And like, I don't mean like 16-year-old kids. I believe it was kids between the ages of like 8 to like 12. Totally wrong. And so what happened was a bit of a tragedy because they were caught, and the US, sued them, and they shut down. And then it was a very large amount of these kids that starved to death because they no longer had a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, from one side, child labor should not be allowed anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
From the other side, that specific example, and probably there are more, could have been better handled because they were not paid like a royalty from sales or supported. They just closed down the factory and left and tried to hide their public image, not to do anything with that country.
Yeah.
Because I guess supporting them would also hurt their brand image. And yeah, I believe there were like over 100 kids that just, because it no longer had a job, they just starved to death.
Well, that's what we're saying, isn't it? It's that balance between what is right and what helps everybody, and the realistic kind of like place that we do live right now.
Yeah.
And employability is a big issue. Like we kind of kicked off the show, didn't we? Like talking about all the different aspects of what sustainability are. And I was talking about, you got the raw materials element, or what you're talking about now, the kind of the human element is a whole kind of like module of what that is. So you've got kind of like, okay, you've got child labour, which is a huge one. You've got women's rights, which is a huge, huge one, and how people are treated. And then you've got employability contracts. So if you do get laid off, what happens? Do you just get laid off and that's it? Okay, see you later, mate. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So you've got no more job. That's it. Your family are going to starve and you may die.
Yeah.
So it's that security. And a lot of those things aren't in place.
Yeah.
So again, like I was talking about with raw materials and organic, there's a lot of these bodies. Is fair wear? I'm trying to remember them all. I had them all in my head years ago and I can't remember them. For people who are listening who may want to check it out, I think, but you can probably Google it and find them. There are a lot of these bodies which are put into place to give people protection.
Yes.
Basically everything that we take for granted in our kind of like civilization, so that if something goes wrong, these people are protected. Now, when we had the pandemic and COVID-19, how was that, 4 years ago? 3 years ago?
My gosh, that was 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Can you imagine?
What have I done?
It started in
5 years.
February of 2020.
It wasn't it?
Before
Yeah,
the
no,
lockdowns.
but it went on until, let's say, 2022.
Oh yeah, it ended in 2022, so 3 years ago.
Yeah. So, because I was still in the kind of like that realm of the fashion industry, and I was very hot on my sustainability then, and that's when I was doing my study. There was a number of retailers, and the one that sticks out in my head at the very, very top is Urban Outfitters, which is why I've never walked into their shop again since.
Right. What did they do?
They cancelled all of their orders.
Okay.
So obviously you will place your seasonal orders, continuity orders, whatever, with your supply base. And a lot of them, for these cheap, fast fashion, will be focused around the Middle East. It's starting to move a little bit more now, but cheap labour, cheap price. You can sell cheaply. For anyone who buys stuff at Primark, if you can buy clothes that cheap, think about it. Someone's getting shortchanged down the road.
That makes so much sense.
It's easy to identify. So.
Because you need a margin to make a profit. Like 99% of businesses, they don't operate because they love what they do. They're in this industry because they found a way to make a profit. So if a t-shirt costs $3, they need to pay rent, they need to pay the manager, they need to pay a portion of it to the supplier. And somewhere down this long line, it should also reach the person producing it.
It should do, shouldn't it? Yeah, but that's saying that the unfortunate thing is it doesn't always have that.
Yeah,
I've completely lost my train of
No,
thought.
that's completely fine. So we were talking about Primark and then Urban Outfitters.
That was it.
Nobody should wear it. What do you think?
Yeah, sorry, I've totally just.
They canceled their orders from the suppliers, I guess, not from the consumers. Yeah.
So from the suppliers. So because they go, oh yeah, our economy, everyone's economy has crashed. COVID-19, no one's buying as much. They cancelled everything, and they don't pay. So a lot of the suppliers have bought the raw materials, they've bought the buttons, they've bought the cloths, the belts, the whatever it is, the metalware, the hardware, they've bought all of the things. A lot of the clothes are probably even made sitting in the warehouse, ready to be exported out.
Yeah.
But because of payment terms and the way things are set up, a lot of times the liability will stay with the suppliers until it's either, depends on what it is, it's on the water, it won't be in the air for those kind of places, but or it's in the UK warehouse or whatever it is, and they just go, don't want it anymore. And that's an enormous amount of money that's lost.
Yeah.
And then, of course, people will also lose their jobs because the people who are owning the factories will be like, well, I can't afford to pay you if we don't have any orders.
Yeah. Even worse if they've already produced it and now they have nowhere to send it to. They need a warehouse to store it in. All those clothes is rotting away because of the moist environment of all these climates.
All that stuff. And it's made even worse when you consider what fast fashion is and the transitionality of clothes and the seasonality. That stuff might never be wanted because it's not cool anymore.
Yeah.
And that's just, for me, morally incredibly wrong.
Yeah.
And there was a big campaign trying to call out a lot of the retailers who didn't pay for any of their orders. And I've got no idea of the human impact of what that is. But I'm sure if we did know, it would be pretty tragic and pretty scary.
Yeah.
And that's just one of all these elements of what sustainability are, you know?
So we talked that there's a human element. Then there is the element of, remind me of the other couple. Just because for me, sustainability is such an umbrella term. It's really cool that we're breaking it down into like different paths. What other ones did we say it was?
So you've got the raw elements.
Raw elements.
Yeah. So
that's all the like whether not using leather and instead using something that is.
No, that's part of it. But just raw elements is just the what's making it.
Yeah.
So is it cotton? Whatever it is, and
then
you've got the production of it as well. That whole kind of production element
is the raw element
of doing that. That's where the vast majority of the environmental damage is done.
Yeah,
I think it's like 60% or higher.
Yeah.
So if you look at the life cycle of a singular product, let's just take as a pair of jeans or a t-shirt, something like that. Most of the damage that's done to the environment happens in that section.
Right. And do you know how?
It's because to take something such as cotton crop, wool on a sheep, whatever it is, polyester.
Yeah.
To take that and transform it into a fabric that can be used to woven into a garment requires an enormous amount of energy. So you've got the growing element of it, all the water that goes into it.
Yeah.
And then you've got cleaning. So if you're taking wool from a sheep, that has to go through a really extensive, really hot cleaning process.
Okay.
And you've got the bleaching, you've got the colouring, then you've got the dyeing. All of that is why it's so damaging. And it's quite easy to understand. If you haven't been educated about this, why would you know?
Yeah.
I mean, like, most people don't know what goes on in their own bodies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The only reason I know is because I studied it for 3-4 years. I know Malik obviously knows better than I do as well, who was on last week.
Exactly. I think you guys have a very different area of specialty. It's that's why this is very interesting.
Yeah.
And he will talk about the effects that things do, and I think where what you can really contribute to and say is like specifically outline like the direct effects and how it's made and things like that.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
And with all this as well, it's kind of like you've got the damage that raw material, kind of like whatever we call it, activation, dying can be really, really dangerous in terms of the workers who work with those chemicals.
Okay.
They're meant to have PPE and all this protective gear. I'm sure that some of them just aren't. Again, it comes back to the workers' rights. You know, they're not considered. They're not thought about. It's just about the profit. And then you've got all the stuff that gets washed out into the waters. This isn't looked after. This isn't treated. So it's just a really poorly done process, and that's where all the damage is caused. Then, of course, you've got the manufacturing process, and then you've got transit as well. So,
sorry, what's the difference between the manufacturing process and the raw materials?
So, raw material is just making it, getting the raw materials to a state that they can be used, and then manufacturing is creating a garment.
Okay, like sewing jeans out of it and things like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you can apply this to anything. We're just talking about fashion, but I would have thought that if you're talking about construction, there must be an element of making concrete or making bricks or making whatever kind of like natural resources are used. I don't know, nails, timber, whatever it is. I would have thought that process, again, takes a huge amount of energy to create that stuff. I've got no idea whatsoever. And then you've got the manufacturing process, which is, of course, creating that product that you're then going to sell.
So then it's really a shame if a person buys something, like you say, from fast fashion, like, I don't know, a skirt that was trendy 15 seconds ago and goes out of trend by tomorrow.
Yeah.
It goes through that process. It's dyed. It's first collected, then it's dyed and created and then sewn in the factory, and then you wear it and nothing ever happens to it again.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big journey and for a very small lifespan. It's a bit of a waste.
Hitting the nail on the head, isn't it?
Oh,
so
interesting.
Yeah, and well, that's that whole linear model. It's just we take it, we make it, we sell it, and then it's dead.
So from someone, because you've been into this topic for 10 plus years, right?
I've been in the fashion industry for about 8.
8?
Yeah, but I've never worked in the fashion industry in an aspect of environmentalism and sustainability. I always did product.
So what would be some maybe practical applications or advice or like your personal takes on how you can try your best to not contribute to such a thing? Like what's the what are the things that you can apply with this knowledge
as a consumer? Yeah, there's lots of different things that you can do, and many of these people are already adopting.
Right.
If we think about that life cycle that we've got, that does exist. That linear life cycle just does exist. The alternative is a circular one. So we can try to be more circular, because that's to an extent that first one isn't always going to change, and it's definitely not going to change quick enough.
Yeah.
So to be circular, what you need to do is you need to change that end part of the life cycle.
Yeah.
So instead of bin, throw, burn, whatever, reuse.
Yeah.
Depop, Vinted, eBay. I know it's not as popular nowadays. Vintage stores. That's a huge way that we can give continued life to those products.
So would that mean for a consumer, rather than going to Primark, you can go to a vintage store and see if there's something there that you like?
Yep. Yeah. Because the more that we can keep any element within a loop, the less virgin, new that needs to come into it. So we don't need to keep making more T-shirts or more whatever, because we can use ones that we've already got in the system.
Yeah.
And this is why I love things like Depop and Vinted, because they've become very, very trendy, very, very popular amongst young consumers. And a lot of young consumers are much more environmentally conscious and they're aware of these things. And as these become more kind of like key destinations for shoppers, that will help to move that needle, because new things won't need to be made. And of course, you've got the idea of sustainable retailers, people who make things like everything we were talking about earlier. They make things which are organic. They're using suppliers who are treating their workers correctly.
Fairly, yeah.
They're using suppliers who are being held to certain standards in terms of the chemicals they use, the effluent they give out. That's the wastewater, like chemicals and things going into the water. But that's still stuff that's being made. So for me, the big thing we can do, number one, is stop buying.
What's stop buying?
Just stop. No, literally just stop buying things. Don't buy.
Stop buying.
Yeah,
Okay,
literally don't buy it. The biggest issue really is consumption. We have such a huge consumption rate. We just buy and buy and buy and buy and buy. So as long as that demand is there, retailers will continue to produce. So if you can stop buying, that's great. Buy less of. If you can reuse, share clothes, that's great. And then you've got, as we're talking about, it's the second-hand market, which keep things in a loop. So there's quite a lot of things that people can do, really.
From a price point of view, how expensive or is it cheaper to, kick this process going again from a consumer's point of view? Because like with perhaps my business background, if you can make it cheaper to the consumer, it feels like there is potentially a profit margin to be made. But I can also see a world in which, in order to collect all the used clothes and sort through them and maybe make some kind of an attractive, not even a showroom, but like if you walk into a vintage store, it looks a lot less appealing than if you walk into Primark, because Primark has it separated into colors and sizes and different kind of seasonal wear. In my experience, if you walk into a vintage store, me and one of my best friends, Valerie, we walked into one in Paris, and it was great, but like there are coats which only have one size, and all the shoes are not put into, those really, I will even say like sexy looking boxes with people advertising them. So what I'm saying is that you walk into it and it's really, it takes a lot longer to be attracted to buy something. So then you mentioned this consumer mentality that a lot of us have in the West. If you don't go in to specifically purchase a necessary coat because it's wintertime and you're broke, if you just go to update your wardrobe, which is what I would say most people do when they do shopping, from a price point of view, what is that like? Is that typically cheaper if you go secondhand, or is it more expensive? Because
I don't think there's a straight answer to it, because with a lot of vintage stores and the secondhand market, there's kind of like, it's a spectrum. You've got some places that you'll just get a load of really, really cheap stuff, and it's really, really interesting. It's nice and it's unique. And in my personal view, it's a lot of it's like beautiful clothes. It's got character
definitely
to it. Yeah,
absolutely.
But then you've also got the element that this has become very desired, so price points go up.
Yeah.
So I bought a pair of shoes the other day for 70 quid off of Depop.
Yeah.
70 quid for a pair of second-hand trainers, just because that particular brand and model is quite desired at the moment.
Right.
So it's just the demand supply kind of like mechanisms of any economy, right? So you can get both sides. Sometimes it's not cheaper. Sometimes it is cheaper to go down the fast fashion route. Sometimes it's easier to go down the fast fashion route. Maybe that's because of access, in terms of we can just walk into the store. Maybe it's because the delivery and return kind of system that the online store offers is more favorable. Perhaps it's free delivery and free returns. So you've got that kind of like ease as the customer.
Yeah.
So that's where I feel that the market needs to just evolve. Like if we think about it, it's actually really new. Depop Vinted, I don't know how long they've been going on for.
I've started getting ads for them maybe a year ago, and I haven't heard of them before.
Exactly. Even if they've been going for 10, 15 years, they're only really present in our mind in a very, very recently. So there's a huge amount of work there to be done to try to bring that up to the standard. I mean, like, if we could get to a point where, like secondhand stores were presented more like a retail store and the access was there, and rather than being little districts in London, we've probably got 3 or 4 key districts in London for it, then maybe the answer to your question would be the price point would be parity. Yeah. There would be a balance there. But it's not there at the moment. But also it's kind of like, for a lot of people who like to shop like this, we enjoy that atmosphere. We enjoy how different it is. It's part of the experience, and that adds into it. But then it just means that it doesn't attract everybody.
I think there is a big emotional element into specifically clothes shopping. I would say it's a similar thing for a lot of other things which you can put in the sustainability category. if you go to a supermarket and you are buying a fish, I know you don't eat fish, but
I do not.
you're vegan, right? Which means it's
Yeah.
no fish. Like my father, he's a pescatarian,
Oh,
so
cool.
he doesn't eat meat for ethical reasons. But then he does eat fish as it's a great.
I'm
source
totally
of
fine
protein.
to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't stress me. So yeah.
And I think with a lot of these things, you have like this kind of it's a great marketing trick. You have what the store produces, like let's say that's what like the Tesco brand fish, and then you have like Scottish salmon, which costs an extra 15% on it, and there is a certain marketing approach where they make that packaging look a little bit like more expensive using darker colors. It's got maybe some backstory to it, so you don't necessarily buy the more expensive fish because it's better tasting. You buy it because you feel better about buying it. And I think the same thing goes with clothes. I'm not talking about high fashion because that's a whole different, it's very weird, different line of, I don't get high fashion, but I'm sure there are people that could educate me on it, but I don't get the appeal from it.
It's totally different, isn't it? Yeah.
But if you go regular clothes shopping, there's a certain emotional excitement that you get when you, like what you said, you look at those 70-pound shoes that are desirable. And so getting that must make some kind of not an ego boost. Like, what's a better way of putting it? You enjoy it, right? You're happy that you made a purchase. You didn't just buy some carrots at the store. You bought something that makes it exciting.
But at the end of the day, like, emotion drives pretty much all of our actions. Like, it's quite funny. My mum just says we're a big bag of chemicals.
Yeah.
Which is kind of true.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are. Like, and yeah, we are driven effectively by that. So it's difficult because we're talking about all these things and it's like, what's right, what's wrong, how do we fix that? But at the end of the day, how do you get into a person's psyche and say, no, you need to do this because it's better for X, Y, Z?
Or
People
even
like
because doing things that when they're better is like a moral statement, and a lot of people are tired of constantly being told what to do. It would be cool if like there was a lot of how there's fashion models that make regular clothes look really desirable. Fantasizing on the spot here.
All of us.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine you walk into a vintage store and you see someone wearing like a vintage coat, but on a screen. I don't know. Maybe AI can do it. Like, okay, here is a wild fantasy of the far future. Imagine in the far future in 10 years' time. You walk into a store and you can see some of the donated clothes or like secondhand clothes on an AI generated model, like a tall looking guy or a blonde girl with long legs, and she's wearing what it is that you're buying. That would make me personally,
it's the shopping experience,
more likely to buy.
It?
It's the shopping experience. I'm not a big shopper, but I just imagine that the reason this industry doesn't move along is probably something to do with that. So it's very. Is it expensive to sustain a maybe like vegan lifestyle and to be sustainable?
I mean, I totally agree with you, Maxim. I think that would be brilliant. Like, if you could come into stores and we could have all this kind of customer interaction, it would drive interest at the very, very least. And maybe that's where we will go. Vegan lifestyle, expensive? No. Personally, I do not. But when I do talk about this with people, I totally understand how, for some people, it can be.
Okay.
I'm fortunate that I am a good cook.
Right.
So I can make things that are tasty, interesting. I know how to be efficient with resources. I know how to be efficient with, I've got that in my head now, ingredients and make stuff. So, and just my mindset is, I find that easy to do it.
Yeah.
So it's not expensive. It's not nutritionally worse in any way, shape or form. For me, it's superior in every way. But I can also understand that if you don't like cooking, you don't have my knowledge, it is more difficult because you are cutting out food groups. And eating vegan food can be a little bit more difficult because the default of I'm just going to get, a protein, mix it with a grain or pasta or something, throw some sauce on it. I guess you can do that with meat alternatives, but I wouldn't want to be eating like that all the time.
Yeah.
To me, what a true vegan diet is a whole foods, plant-based diet where you're using legumes, you're using a mixture of grains and not just rice, using all the different ones that you can, nuts, seeds, all these wonderful, interesting, colourful food groups. That just takes a little bit more time and skill. And a lot of people don't have that time and skill.
I think the biggest concern with specifically a vegan diet would be the protein intake. How do you go about it? Because you also go to the gym. By the way, I should make a little side note. The most motivating thing ever. I wake up and I'm like, I'm up early. And I look at my phone and I see Ross in the gym already finishing his workout. I love that. And I'm like, I'm not the first. I need to pick it up and go do
Mondays
some sports.
have stopped now, though. I don't go Mondays anymore. So
how often do you go to the gym?
I used to go 4 times a week.
That's incredible. That's so good.
I'd have to get up super early Monday because you have to be in work at 9 a.m. and it's trade and we're doing all our analysis. So it's like you got to get there.
But it's so motivating. I love seeing that.
Yeah, it was funny, wasn't it? It was funny. Yeah.
So you, especially going to the gym 4 times a week, you would want to consume a lot of protein. How does that go about? You mentioned legumes, and I think those have protein. How do you manage to get sufficient protein with vegan diet?
Firstly, which I would hope that a lot of people nowadays do know, but then as with all things, because we're all effectively in a bit of a bubble, aren't we? And as soon as we step outside of that bubble, people might just not have that knowledge at all. We don't need nowhere near as much protein as, let's say, we are led on to believe that we do need. Yeah.
Talk me through it. That's very interesting. I'd love to hear your take on it.
1.6, 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight is really all we need, and there's extensive studies. I'm not going to obviously reference anything. Google is your friend.
So I've seen the same metrics. I've seen between 1.2 and 2, and it's very similar to what you're saying. Yeah. It's still quite a lot, right? So I weigh 69 kilos. So even going, what did you say, 1.6?
Yeah, that's if you're trying to actively
gain muscle, right?
Gain, or if you train a lot, stuff like that.
So you need like at least 85 to 90 grams of protein.
Let's do the maths, because
let's do it.
Calculator. So let's just put 68 times 1. I'll just do 1.7.
Yes.
So that's 115 grams of protein.
Yes.
So even if we wanted to do a little bit more than that. So let's do 68 times, let's just do 1.9.
Yes.
So it's 129. So 130, so say 130 grams of protein a day. That's if you are training relatively regularly. If you are not training, you can drop that down to maybe 1 gram.
Yeah.
So that is so easy. You don't even need to think about it.
Well, I actually would like, based on what I eat when I'm off meat and fish. I actually don't know. I'd be able to collect 60 grams. So like if you, let's make an example. If you eat 3 times a day, how would you reach at least like 100 grams of protein?
Yeah.
Would you talk it through?
So I guess because...
First of all, what are the protein sources in a vegan diet? I know beans are. Anything else?
Bean. All legumes are pretty quite balanced between proteins and carbohydrate. Then you've got nuts and seeds, which are a good way of adding that in, and healthy fats. Vegetables, they're not high in anything, but they're actually quite balanced between protein and carbohydrates.
Oh, good.
So even though they're very, very low in their macronutrients, their protein ratio is actually quite high.
Right.
And then you'll be really surprised how much protein there is in quinoa, in rice and other grains like that, in bread.
Bread has protein?
Yep.
Really? Is specific bread, like white bread, brown bread?
Brown's generally a bit better.
Brown's better, yeah.
And some certain types of grains that you're using will be slightly high. I'm not saying that these are really high protein. I'm just saying that...
They all contain it?
Everything contains a little bit more than you actually expect. So getting to that really low kind of like 60, 50, 70, if you're eating a relatively varied diet, it shouldn't be too difficult to get to the higher levels that we're talking about, the 130.
Yeah.
100% I supplement with protein powder.
That's great.
Yes, I just use pea protein. So an example meal will be in the morning. This morning I had some overnight oats. So I just put 10 grams. Yeah.
I like it because
They're
that's what I
great,
do
aren't
as
they?
well.
Did you have it this morning?
No, but if I ever meal prep, especially when my partner's away, I put overnight oats for like 3 days up front, and I mix
They're
them with
banging.
some.
They're so easy.
So good.
Yeah.
And they're tasty.
So I just put 10 grams into that.
Oh, yeah.
Oats, soya milk. This morning I had a really luxurious one. I had like this hazelnut spread. It's like a vegan version of Nutella. Oh my God. Stir that in with some dates. It's awesome.
I heard Nutella is like the worst for the environment.
Is it really?
So I'm going to find out why for you next time we meet. But my partner said that something about their production method makes it so deadly for the environment in terms of like carbon dioxide emissions.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It feels like a chocolate spread, but actually it's like a whole farm of emissions that goes out into it.
And this is just a bit of a prejudice from me because I can't necessarily back it up, but I do feel that when you've got those absolutely massive brands, they've got such an influence and they just make so much money and everyone likes them so much. They don't have that morality for their impact.
I think that's why they got there. Because I think a regular moral person that doesn't cut any shortcuts
wouldn't get there.
It would be 1 in 100. But then the people that do allow themselves to take some shortcuts and don't necessarily have to do everything right and ethically, when presented with a choice, they take the more financially driven choice.
Yeah.
And that's why they get up there. So if you look at the top and if you look at like the top 1,000 millionaires, most of the stuff they're doing is not pointed at ethics. It's more pointed at what generates the most money, which is why they have the most money.
Yeah.
So it's strange. It's especially like I've joined this members club right now, and it's great for networking. And in fact, it's so great that it's kind of paying me back. Like there's a joining fee, but people then come to my spa and they make that money back. And it's really interesting to hear.
Shout out Maxim's Spa, by the way. It's very good.
Oh,
Had
thank you.
a great massage there.
Very glad. We're opening a second location soon. It's just
yes,
that's exciting.
Have to go.
And it's very interesting to see what all these people are doing, and then you just kind of see this gradual. It's very interesting to kind of judge inside you and observe a lot of people that you can see really have achieved the high highs. Don't necessarily have a lot of concern, not in a bad way, just from a natural point of view. They're not so interested in how to make things like, let's say, in an office, in a workplace, how to make the most pleasant environment. Instead, their mind goes to efficiency, which is great from a point of view. And again, a business has an obligation to their shareholders to make the most money, especially if they have investors. It is very important. But it's interesting that it seems like that comes with a price, and that price is maybe a little bit less ethics involved.
When I was in the process of kind of like designing the business that I was running, which I don't run anymore, so we don't need to obviously go into huge detail on that. I read a book called Conscious Capitalism.
Conscious Capitalism.
And it's written by, I forget his name. It's the man who was the founder and set up of the Whole Foods market.
Yeah.
And Raj Sisodia, who he co-wrote this book with. And it's all about his kind of like belief system that we can have conscious capitalism, which is what you're talking about, as saying that if you are developing and you're very, very successful, how are your efficiencies? How is your drivers, your responsibility to your shareholders? Is it all about profit and money? And his argument is that it isn't, that there's so many stakeholders in a business. Shareholders are one of them, but we also have equal responsibilities to our customers, to our employees, to the environment. And there's all these tenets that he has. And
interesting. So environment is also a stakeholder of your business. That's a beautiful approach.
In his point of view. And I think it's very, very true. we can see that how when we damage the environment, which we saw in the lockdown, how delicate our systems are, how inflexible they are. And the environment is a stakeholder because we are connected to it. We always will be. And it is the single most powerful force on this planet without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
When we are using our planet and our resources, we need to be in balance with it. And when we have these systems and these supply chains, we need to be in balance with it, because if we disrespect them, if it goes wrong, that can totally mess up your business.
Oh, yes.
So that's how, even from a commercial point of view, that's how important the environment is as a stakeholder. We were talking about Nutella, weren't we?
Yes.
Made of hazelnuts?
I believe so.
It's hazelnuts, isn't it?
I think so.
I can imagine that they have a gigantic monocrop farm all dedicated to that singular crop.
Yeah.
So it's all about efficiency.
Which is bad for the soil, right?
Which is bad for the soil, which is bad for the environment, which is bad for biodiversity. If something was to go wrong in that system, that could fall incredibly quickly. Now, I'm sure, of course, it won't, because they probably got all the best scientists in the world checking it.
Oh, until it does.
Exactly. But there's an example of how they probably have made it cheaper by using that, but their environmental responsibility is not great.
Yeah.
But that book's actually really interesting.
What's it called again?
It's called Conscious Capitalism. Do you know what? I can just lend it to you.
Oh, I would love that.
It's
thank
a big book.
Yeah, okay.
But it's very interesting. And in our society, we get a lot of people, especially like myself, quite left-wing focused.
Yeah.
And there's that phrase, isn't there, that like, oh, am I allowed to swear?
Yes, you are. Absolutely.
Fuck capitalism.
Yeah.
People say this all the time. Fuck capitalism. And they'll be standing there with their, stickers on the back of their laptop, their Apple Mac laptop. Fuck capitalism. Do you know what I mean?
See where you're going with this.
See where I'm going with this. And I'm not trying to be horrible, because I do agree with a lot of these people. But from reading that book, I did have a little bit of an issue with capitalism, and I still do to an extent. But the way that these two authors presented it was actually that it's how we use capitalism that's the problem. Yeah. But he uses the phrase of like free-form capitalism. I think it's free-form or whatever it is.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's just a way of saying that if capitalism is done in the right way, it's actually really beneficial.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking earlier about the Nike example and them employing the young children and then the devastating impact that came from the loss of their jobs.
Yeah.
Capitalism creates work. It gives opportunity.
Yeah.
A lot of people come over to the Western countries, the United States, huge immigration because
of
capitalism. So capitalism naturally isn't a bad thing. It's the way that we've used it and what it's evolved into becoming. And that's why I think that this book is so interesting. And when I was building my business, I was trying to consider all of this as in the model, to kind of be like, okay, we need to consider these things to be better. Of course, that just makes it a lot more difficult.
Feels like a vicious cycle. Yeah. If you are a business that considers ethical implications, you're more likely to fail because it's more expensive. Mm-hmm. Environment doesn't necessarily pay you back as directly as a consumer does.
These are all very long-term strategies, aren't they?
But if you don't take that into consideration, you're more likely to succeed, and therefore you're more likely to grow and big and be the monopoly. And then let's say 5% of conscious small businesses that do succeed are too small to make a significant impact. Feels like a bit of a catch-22.
Yeah, we're in a difficult place, aren't we? Let's be honest.
Capitalism, I guess I really like this approach with what you're saying. It's how you use it. It's also very different. If you look at UK's capitalism and US capitalism, and then you look at Norway, and then you look at Japan, and you look at Singapore, it's all capitalism, but it's so different. Even like taking UK and Norway as an example, the Scandinavian system is so different with, I guess, both have incredibly high taxes, but what the main difference I see is in Scandinavia, I believe it's both the businesses and the employees that pay like huge taxes. And in the UK, it's a little bit more the employer, which just makes the employees receive a smaller salary that is less taxed.
Mm.
So it ends up being a similar thing, but the structure is a touch different, but both are capitalism, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, like, I'm not aware of that. I mean, I've lived pretty much all of my life here in the UK. I did live in Australia for a year and a half. But yeah, there are so many different ways that we can do this. And
What would you improve in specifically the UK? Like if you could, I don't know,
magic
magic
scenario.
wand and change one or two things, what would you push for?
That's a very difficult question. What would I improve? I'd turn everyone vegan. No, that's a joke. Of course, I would love that. I know it's not realistic.
What changed the world for, like, it would really change the world. If everybody turned vegan,
Yeah.
I think that would make such a huge change. And I think it would be a net positive.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, it would be a huge net positive.
Yeah. I will definitely come back to that question you
Yes.
just asked me. There was a study done by the Lancet, and I can't remember when it was. It's quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
And it's a study that's held right up there. As with all studies, there's probably been criticism of it. But it basically looks at the elements of the amount of damage that we're doing to the planet, how far we've got until things get really bad, and some key initiatives that we can do to change things. And that could be consumption or greenhouse gases emissions and stuff like that. But one of the key things is that unless a large portion of people go to a more plant-based diet, it's going to be really, really difficult to make significant impact, because as our population continues to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, the damage is there. So yeah, that would be something that I would love to change. But then it also makes me think that we couldn't do that. We don't have the systems in place. If everyone just went bang vegan like that, I don't think there'd be any food.
Yeah. Or it would be like really ultra processed soy, which would be poisonous for probably the environment in the end as well.
Yeah. Because I'm not a fan of eating a lot of alternative proteins.
Yeah.
Is
it because they're ultra processed or?
I don't know if they're ultra processed, but they're definitely processed foods. But I'm just not a fan of eating processed foods.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter if it's vegan or non-vegan.
Yeah.
It's not healthy to eat processed foods.
Yeah.
I don't believe that meat is healthy. And I probably would guess that on the health scale, meat and processed foods probably quite balanced.
That's fair.
Between themselves. They've got their own things which are bad.
Can you talk about this? This is very interesting. I'd love to hear your take on why. I never heard of it. Yeah. First of all, like, why is meat unhealthy, and how so?
Yeah. You've got the whole process that goes through to getting meat. So animals are pumped through with steroids and
antibiotics,
other things, and antibiotics and all this kind of stuff. It's not like we're saying that. Okay, we kicked off. It's not a natural process.
Yeah.
I've seen images of chickens with
those are horrible.
Maybe I won't go into it, but it's just the size of them, and cows the size of them. This isn't how it's meant to be. This is wrong.
Yeah. And so consuming that would leave traces of all those hormones and antibiotics.
It's all in the animals, and then that gets put through into our systems. Then for me as well, it's the trauma element of it.
Yeah.
Like that's in their bodies, that's in their soul. You're just this whole slaughtering process, and then we eat that. Yeah. A lot of people will probably say, "Oh, Ross, fuck off."
No,
but to me,
there is actual real element where it may sound a little bit goofy
out there,
but if the cow knows that it's about to be slaughtered, it releases a huge amount of adrenaline, which later, don't freak out, makes the meat less tender.
Yeah.
So what they do in like all these like Wagyu, like high-end meats, is they make sure that the cow doesn't understand that it's about to die.
Yeah.
And that comes also with a more humane way of killing it. But cows are also very smart. They understand that if cows are loaded on a truck and never come back, when the next cow goes into the truck, they get worried about it. Yeah. So they have certain systems in place where they don't figure it out.
Learned. They're not idiots.
So I don't think it's just the adrenaline. I think, because also there's a lot of things that we as a species don't know. People didn't know electricity existed 500 years ago, whenever that was. And if somebody was to tell them, oh, there are like micro electric currents that can control the lights, that go like, fuck off.
Yeah,
It's just a bunch of black magic. I'm sure in like 1,000 years, if our civilization survives, I would figure out more things. And I think something about like having a conversation, me and you, it's not just throwing words at each other. There must be a little bit more to it. Like I said, it's a bit goofy. That's my take on it.
No, I think that
so I think consuming
that's our
meat,
next kind of like evolutionary step as a species. We've kind of like, we've got all the robotics.
Yeah.
You know, we're connected up to technology now. We're half human, half robot almost. I know that's a bit of it's not a reality, but if you think of that as a metaphor, we kind of are. We can't survive without everything we've got.
The phone is an extension of the brain right now.
It is, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's not plugged into us, but it is.
But this is the emotional first step.
Yeah. Emotional first step.
Do you know what I mean? As you're saying, how connected we are to this and how naked we feel when we don't have this.
Absolutely.
The next step is it's inside you. So I think this is the logical next step that we take, where we try to understand our connection with nature, spiritual connections, and things that we would have considered even today is completely insane. But maybe in not even 1,000 years, maybe in 50, 100 years, we understand the impact of vibrations and auras and this kind of stuff and how it creates an impact. But then the other big thing about why meat is unhealthy is saturated fats.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of just bad stuff in meat.
Yeah.
And if you look at doctors' recommendations for many, many years, it's always been reduce saturated fat content, reduce other things, and it always basically is saying animal products, meat products is bad.
Especially red meat. I am trying to reduce my cholesterol intake because it's really high. And
Did you get it tested?
Yeah, it's for my age group, I'm in the 1 percentile highest. So,
really? Sorry. Is that a genetic thing as well?
Well, I think so, because my father has the same thing, and despite being pescatarian, his
because you're not unhealthy.
Yeah, I think I eat a lot of meat, and I've been trying to cut down on specifically saturated fats. And I thought, okay, instead of eating red meat, I'll eat chicken breast, because that must be so healthy. And then I looked into the macros, and sirloin steak has 85 grams of cholesterol, and chicken breast has 65.
Oh, really?
It's not that much of a difference.
It's not, is it? Doesn't move the needle.
No, not really. So I'm sure like it's a good, like it's a 30% drop. Maybe it will equal up to something. But I think like what my dad has done and move into fish and potentially even going into just eating more vegetables. And
do you know it would be interesting to have a look at the cholesterol in plant-based alternative meats, to see whether it's surprisingly higher than we think.
Really?
I've got no idea. I've got literally no idea.
So my understanding is that when my father turned pescatarian, I kept on telling him, "Oh, you should try that plant-based burger." And without much knowledge about it, he just intuitively said, "I don't want to do it." Yeah. And I said, "But why? You know, you enjoyed steaks 10 years ago. This is exactly that, but it follows your morals." And I don't want to do it. And recently it was discovered that all these, the meats that really look like meats, the soy product, I
had that one around Malik's house the other day, in our juicy marbles. The juicy marbles,
And it's tasty and it looks great. People can't really differ. The problem with them is that they go through an ultra-processed process. Which has a lot of preservatives, which it's weird because when preservatives are added into food, they say there are traces of them, so it's safe to consume. But the issue with that is that if you consume enough over, let's say, a year, then those traces become a significant dose, because our body is like, from what I heard from a podcast, it's like if you throw little bits of poison into a lake, one drop won't do anything, but it will add up. It won't really leave you all that fast. So if you consume a lot of those ultra-processed foods, over a year or something, it ends up being bad for you.
Yeah,
and he kind of felt
exactly. And that's, we went through the bads of meats. This is the bads of alternative proteins.
Yeah.
We've got all these processed things that you're talking about. I'm sure they're very high salt. as well, and high
Yes.
sugars in them.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's not healthy. I don't know what's less healthy between those two, but one thing I'm very, very happy and certain of is that neither of those things are good to have a lot of.
Yeah.
It's
about the balance, right?
It's more about the balance. Yeah. So I don't think that alternative proteins are an answer. They are an alternative to give people a way to get away from meat.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about stem meats and things like that?
Stem meats.
It all comes from stem cells. I'm sure there's another.
Stem cells. Wow.
Yeah, there's another. Is it stem cells? There's another term for it. It's basically it's meat that has been grown in a lab.
Wow.
There is another term for it, and I've just completely popped out of my mind right now. It's a direct replication of the tissue. This is 100% chicken or lamb or beef, whatever it is.
That sounds so dystopian.
It does, doesn't it? But
like you always like picture like babies grown into a lab, and
yeah.
Now it's meat.
Now it's meat. But to me, that's going to be better because you've got the beneficial parts of meat, but they can remove all of those added hormones, all of the steroids, all of God knows what else they put into it, all of the
Probably
trauma,
they can
all
make
of the
it
death.
more lean.
Make it a lot more lean. They can make it a product that's engineered for sustainability and for human consumption.
How new is the technology?
It's been going around for maybe 5 to 10 years. Israel is the hotspot in the world for the startup in this.
Right. Is it because of their halal?
I've got no idea.
Okay.
It's probably because there's a lot of money there.
Okay.
I don't actually know. But it's close. It's close to food service.
Nice.
So food service, if you don't know, not presuming that you do not, but anyone who's listening doesn't know. Food service is producing your products to go into restaurants, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and then retail is, of course,
Supermarket,
direct
direct to consumer. Yeah.
So a lot of products, when they're being made, would do food service first if it suits them better. So that's where synthetic meat is being pushed to first. So if you are, especially if you're a high-end restaurant where customers want to go in and enjoy this product and willing to pay for that experience, it's the logical first step to kind of like get the product into the market, to test it, to see how it really does, than just going, here, Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Waitrose, Walmart, whatever.
Especially those supermarkets are so vicious with it. If they don't have proof of concept, they just won't give you a chance.
They're not going to do it. And customers probably are less likely to buy it.
Oh, yeah.
But through the restaurant avenue, they're more likely to buy it. So it's very close to kind of like being there and ready now.
That's so cool.
Which is really interesting.
Are there any drawbacks? Like, I imagine if something is grown into a lab, my first thought is that it should be pretty good. Is there a catch? Do you know?
The biggest is stigma. So
what kind of stigma?
just the idea that people will just go, oh no, I'm not having that. I'm not eating meat that's grown in a lab.
Interesting. I guess
it's
people
just the emotional response.
My emotional response is that it's better because, like, I am against hunting, but that's a bit hypocritical because I go to Sainsbury's and I buy a cow, which somebody else killed for me. And then I have the audacity to say, oh, you shouldn't go kill animals. But then I literally pay other people to do it. That feels like that eliminates a big part of the problem. I can enjoy meat because I think it's, great, but it's... I don't have to go.
You're probably just being quite logical, and I think that a lot of people are not logical. They just
it's emotional.
It's
It's
emotional.
weird. It's grown in a lab.
Yeah,
But fuck.
I've spoken to a lot of people about this, just casually in conversation, just gone, hey, what do you think about it? And the vast majority of people do go, oh no, that just freaks me out a bit. Why? The vast majority of the foods that we eat are made in some kind of laboratory situation or been processed, crisps, you name it. But I think that will be the biggest thing because from everything that I know about following the development of this product is it's miles healthier, miles better for the environment. It will be a lot cheaper as well because...
Yeah, I was going to ask about the price. What is the price point on that?
It will start off high,
Yeah.
but if you just think about the economics of how you grow a business and
Need
the model
economies of scale,
inefficiencies.
absolutely.
You don't need this gigantic amount of half of the Amazon broken down and all the water and all the everything that goes into it. You're just in a lab. It's a much more efficient process.
Nice.
So parity in terms of a lot of times when you're talking about plant alternative products coming into the marketplace, when do they reach parity in terms of taste, experience, and price point? And that's when they can really start to threaten animal products.
Nice.
And in terms of parity, this can reach parity and surpass it in all of those three elements. So there's a lot of upsides.
I wonder if big farming companies, like if this was a pharmaceutical product, what would happen is one of the big pharmacy players would buy it and bury it. Because that's what, that would be the most profitable thing. Why would they give people an alternative to this whole industry? But I don't think the farming world works like that. I really hope that nobody, gets in the way of it.
Well, that is definitely part of it. There will also be, I don't know if lobbying is the right word, but political and marketing pressure against it. That will probably be the first weapon that's being used.
Against the growing?
Against synthetic meat.
Against synthetic meat?
Yeah, we've already seen it against plant-based products.
Really?
So
plant-based products?
Yeah.
Why could people be against it?
Because it threatens them.
Okay.
So propaganda is pushed out.
Like it threatens the businesses that actually run the actual meats, or you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll get big animal agriculture.
Yeah.
Will and have been for many years start shaming the idea of what plant-based products are. You've heard about it all in the media. They're really, really unhealthy. Yeah. They're labelled as ultra processed. They're terrible for you. And all of this propaganda comes out.
Oh yeah.
And that is the first weapon that's used to disarm it
going
forward. And probably it will be used continually against synthetic meat. And I believe that the big thing will be that stigma. It's not natural. I can just see it's not natural being used as a headline.
I can see like a TikToker, like a
do you know what I mean?
Young guy or girl at the age of 20 being like, "Oh, I would never eat meat that's grown in a lab. That's disgusting."
You're so on the point.
Because if I was a big player in the farming industry, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
I need to keep my business. I want, I don't want it to decline. That's my responsibility as a business owner. How can I affect that? I think a lot of information that we consume, and a lot of the information that we consume is soft, like in the form of short form content. I don't think it's just the algorithm that picks it and it's really random. There very often is a narrative behind it. Could put on my conspiracy hat, but that's how I feel about it.
Getting deep now, aren't we?
Yeah. When me and my partner both open I'm off all social media, but I'm still on YouTube, and I sometimes watch YouTube shorts and kind of doom scroll through it. We see the exact same news information, but I get one side of it, how everything is good on it, and Joy gets the other. And that's because we are like fed different narratives. Like when Trump got shot, me having some background being connected to Russia, it was all like, "Oh, how horrible this is." And Joya, who's maybe a touch more pro-left.
That's how it was reported in Russia. That's dodgy, isn't it?
And then, it's a shame, it's unhuman. Oh, hope everything is fine, that kind of thing. It wasn't necessarily reported in Russia, but it was like, it was more like Fox News kind of side. And then the other line that was there was that, oh, fuck, they missed.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the same exact piece of information. And this is just the one that I remember, but it happens sometimes. And then the narrative is just so completely different. So I think it's not just random. I think if you're a big player, you can use social media to feed a narrative to say that, synthetic meats are bad, or the opposite if they're good. And definitely, like, Elon Musk didn't buy Twitter for funsies. I think it's a control on opinions.
We can really go down this rabbit hole for a long time, can't we? Because like, who knows how many links between these big businesses with money there is, they probably do all play into each other in some way.
Yeah.
Not that they are in league with each other in inverted commas, but it's in each other's interests to maintain the status quo, because the status quo has made them all incredibly rich.
Yeah.
So it's just, as we were saying, that's how you get there. How they stay there is by behaving the same way.
Yeah.
So whenever there is some kind of threat or a disruptor to that marketplace, they
You gotta
will.
come at it.
They cut it out. Do you know what I mean?
I think this is the biggest in pharma. Whenever there is like, I hope that's not the case. But one of the things that people are worried about if somebody invents a cure for cancer, is that somebody puts a patent on it, puts it on the bottom shelf, and doesn't pick it up for 99 years until the patent loses its power because, it's so profitable. I don't think the world is that bad. I'm still
I do. Mate, this is an interesting way of looking at it, but we're called patients, right?
Yes.
Patients is just another word for customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really do believe in you. I don't believe that everybody would feel that way, but I do believe there are certain people, and they're probably the decision makers, who would drip feed things. People are not interested in curing people.
Yeah.
Because if everyone's cured, there's no customers.
Yeah, I think it's like with medicines that you have to take for the rest of your life. The moment a doctor prescribed me like medicine for my cholesterol that I have to take forever, I'm going to try to stay away from that for as long as possible because I trust doctors. I really do. But it could be that the system is made in a way where it just really encourages you to take something that can be sold rather than fixing the core issue. And I think you can go from something as little as cholesterol pills to something as big as like cancer treatment.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great business model, isn't it?
Yeah.
Repeat sales are right there.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate subscription.
The ultimate subscription. You know about
You can't give up. You will die. So
yes.
there you are.
Yeah. Oh, that's awful. That's
It's kind of
really
scary, isn't it?
You mentioned before, while we were talking about synthetic goods, that you have to reach like a certain level, first go through like restaurants before going into retail. I wanted to ask if what's your take on all the electric vehicles? From my understanding, right now they're actually doing a net negative to the environment.
Are they?
So, like Tesla, for example, are selling all these batteries.
Cunt, by the way. Everyone follow. Everyone hates Elon on Instagram. If it doesn't get shut down,
is it? It's probably not present on Twitter or X, whatever.
No, you wouldn't let that.
It's going to be on Twitter.
It's already in problems on Instagram.
Yeah, but I guess it's like all electric cars. I just know about Tesla because before Elon joined politics, that's the narrative that I read on it. But I assume it's all electric vehicles. These batteries. They save carbon emissions because you don't burn fuel. But to manufacture one of these batteries emits more fuels than what that same amount of distance would be covered in petrol. In other words, if you drive 100,000 kilometers with petrol, and then the lifespan of an electric vehicle is 100,000 kilometers, the production creates more emissions than the actual petrol.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason it's good is because by investing money into this, you will make the battery more efficient. So if right now you're driving a Tesla or any kind of an electric car, you're actually harming the environment much more. But it's in the long term that your contribution will be a net positive. But that's not the narrative that we're all being sold. The narrative is buy an electric car, save the world, but it's more complex than that.
Yeah. Well, this is just that whole kind of greenwashing element, isn't it?
What element, sorry?
Greenwashing.
What is that?
Greenwashing is kind of like the idea of just selling a sustainability message, not with the purpose of the environment or whatever it is at heart. It's because you want to make more money at the end of the day. So it's just kind of like washing it through there. And it's kind of like it's effectively a lie to the customer and using that positive sustainability.
I would say it's more deception, right? Because it's not really a lie because it is good if this works. But you're missing an important point.
Yeah.
Being that actually it's not working now. It's
Yeah.
just and there's a whole different thing that they don't know how to recycle these batteries.
Yeah.
They just bury them in the ground. Like I also know that you know those windmills, the wind energy.
Yeah, that's the farm things.
Do you know if they're good or not? Because I've heard
Don't know,
very.
mate. I've got no idea.
I heard such mixed opinions on it. Some people say that it's great.
Yeah.
One of my best friends, Valeria, mentioned him earlier in the podcast. He's an engineer, and he says that they definitely create more energy than other carbon emission methods would. But then you have to build them. And their lifespan is not super long. It's between 15 and 25 years. So later you have to deconstruct them and you can't recycle them. You just bury them in the ground. And all that weight needs to be powered by carbon emissions and machines. And so some people say that actually it doesn't do shit because you create X amount of sustainable energy, but to create that energy you need to lift like 20 tons, which is actually more or less, so like 80% of the is set back. 80% is set back because of those carbon emissions.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Pretty complicated.
I mean,
dams, you have so much concrete involved, and that's the worst material possible.
Yeah. Well, this is when it's all about that life cycle assessment, product assessment of what something is, how much damage is there being done, or should we say how much cost there is and how much benefit there is. And it probably comes back to what is the motivational reason behind creating this product. So in the example of Tesla, he does not care about the environment. Tesla, of course he doesn't. He shoots rockets into the space.
Interesting point.
Well, it's an obvious point. Tesla's driven to make money. So he hasn't approached the problem in terms of, okay, what's this issue we have with cars and emissions and how we're damaging the planet? Okay, how can we then create a solution? How can we solve the problem and create a new product which fixes all those things? He has just gone, I want to sell loads of electric cars. How can I put an environmental spin on it as a marketing
It could be
tool?
That. Could be that. It would work because
that is what it is.
I think
100%. Because as you're saying, that's not the answer. I'm sure that if the problem of cars was looked at by people who was trying to truly fix that from a conscious point of view, considering all the different stakeholders, they would not have come up with electric vehicles. There must be something different. And possibly it's the same with the wind farms. I don't actually know, but have these been built by private companies who are wanting to make money?
I think so. I don't think there's a lot of government programs that do. Maybe there are some, but even those, they're government contracts. It could be a cashback system where the government can use it to, use it for political purposes to get more votes, and then their cousin owns a...
It's the thing. It's also deeply interwoven that you just have to look at it from the very point and go, what is the objective of this? And if it is to make money, then there's going to be less interest in those other parts. I mean, I don't know, but it makes a lot of sense what you say. And I know right at the beginning we were talking about clothing products and how they can be more sustainable. Well, a big part of that is what you make something with and how it can be recycled within a loop. So monomateriality is one of those concepts, which basically means being used with one material. Much easier to recycle something that is pure cotton because it just goes straight in. If you are a cotton blend and a cotton mix and you've got metal hardware and you've got horn buttons, that process of extracting that and going back into a loop is much more difficult. And you can apply that to anything. So if these wind farms and everything else, if they're made from stuff that can't be brought back into a system, that's a negative. But if when this whole process was designed, if that's designed to be part of it, then maybe that would be possible. But they haven't been designed like that because it's not the thought process.
Or if we give this whole process the benefit of that it is driven by people who want to make a net positive. Right now, the design is not developed enough to sustain it. But the more you do it, the more efficient and better, let's say specifically wind farming, becomes, and then let's say 12 models from now, that will be the case. But right now, it's
no,
not
of
the
course,
case.
no, it could totally be that as well. It's very hard for us to know because we're just two guys in a room. We don't know, do we?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really hard to say. To end things off, I wanted to ask if you know any positive environment news. And the reason I'm asking is because I enjoyed our conversation so much, because I think we went down positive and practical aspects of sustainability. One of the things that I'm always facing whenever I'm researching this is there's always like headlines that are super negative, like the G7 met for environmentally meeting and they all came on private jets, and
crazy, right?
they made a lot of emissions. And like, yes, that's bad, but I want to hear some positive news about the environment. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit toxic. So my question to you is, do you know anything that you can bring off the top of your head over the past 5 years or something?
Positive over the last... There is one big thing over the last, say, 5-10 years, because unfortunately, off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything. And part of that is probably driven that we're going through economic crisis.
Yeah.
So whenever we go through economic crisis, people default to price point based things, which is generally less efficient,
of course,
more damaging. But the biggest thing that I think is positive out of the environment is awareness.
Wow.
People are talking about it now. People are aware of it, whether that is clothes in the fashion industry and people wanting to buy more secondhand and consume less, whether it is more people being aware of a plant-based diet, whether it is people trying to fly less and do things like this less, or use a bike more. People are more aware, and that is the biggest thing that you can do, because at the end of the day, if all of the consumers demand better, businesses must react.
Businesses are demand driven, so if there's a big enough amount of consumers that want the business to be,
I mean, the people have got the power. They've always had it, but awareness, definitely people are more aware.
And maybe I could ask you for some more practical advice in terms of like one of the ways you can it's a joke, one of the ways you can reduce your carbon emission consumption is by turning off your second fridge. Apart from that,
turn off your TV. It's true though.
What can you do to like an everyday person? What are the little things that can add up and make some kind of an impact?
It's the obvious point, and people may hate me for it, but the number one thing any human being can do is eat a plant-based diet. It's just that the science is so strong. I know people don't want to do it, and I do understand. That. My dad is Spanish. His culture, as many cultures are, is very meat driven. If he doesn't have meat for the main meal, it doesn't feel like a meal.
Right.
But my dad doesn't drink milk anymore. He has oat milk now and he loves it. And for years he was like, never. And now he's like, I can't believe that I never had this. So he's made that switch.
That's beautiful. And these little changes must add up. I'm sure they do.
Of course they do. If like the world is a lot better with 1,000 flexitarians than 100 vegans.
Yeah.
So
that's such a great quote.
It's not my quote, I don't think.
This is so well said. I love it.
I can't take any credit.
The world is better with 1,000 flexitarians than 100 vegans.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, the number one thing everyone can do is 100% follow a plant-based diet for all aspects. If you can't do that, just try to reduce. So yeah.
Thank you for being Ross. Is there any place that people can follow you? Are you selling a course? Is there any plug-in that you can
Not
make?
anymore. But when things start up again, if they do,
we'll come back on and we would love to mention it. Thank you so much. This was a really great conversation. I'd love to have you back.
No worries, Maxim. Thanks for having me, mate.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.